Hi, this is Lundy Kiger, and I want to welcome you to this video. And what we're going to talk about is what motivated me to make a change in my life. You've already seen the video called The Sting that ties into what I do now, called Living to Tell About It. Tell about an experience that took place on June 30th, 2021 that almost took my life. But I want to talk about what took place 6 months prior. I want to talk about the motivation that I had in my life to do one thing that I should have been doing all of my life. And this one thing that I did ended up making, in my mind, a gigantic difference in my life continuing. I've been a Christian for almost 50 years, and I've not been a perfect Christian because we're human and we all make mistakes. But one of the things that has taken place in my life, when I look back on it as a believer, there's times that I have been strong in the faith, and then there's times that I have been weak in the faith. And, you know, one of the things that got my attention was, why can't I just be strong all the time? What is it that I'm doing wrong? And that's something that I thought about all my life, and I'm sure it's something that you think about all your life. And you know that if you do things that make you weaker in the faith, it questions you at time. And we all know that the power of Satan and what he has to be able to tempt us, and we fall into those particular temptations. But let me tell you something that took place in my life the year before, in 2020. As everybody knows, 2020 was terrible. We've lost a lot of family, a lot of loved ones due to COVID and other diseases. But that was a very difficult year, because in about a year period of time, and some of it went into 2021, we lost over 10 relatives. But what really got my attention was, between my wife and I, we lost 3 parents, and I lost a brother. None of them were expected at that particular time to pass away. My wife lost her father first, early in the year. My father had already passed back in '95. But early in the year 2020, she lost her father. It was a tough situation we went through. And then a few months later, she lost her mother, which was a very, very difficult situation for her. And then within 6 weeks, I ended up losing my mother as well. And then something happened in my life that probably was the biggest shock. I've got a younger brother, and you know, he's the kind that, you know, he was ornery. You just think, okay, this guy's going to live forever. He's going to outlive all of us. Had so many health issues, but he always was able to overcome them. And he passed away in October of 2020. And then following that, we had a couple of uncles, or I did, that we lost on my father's side. And you know, when you go through situations like that, there's always things in life that change you. And those changed me, and I think my brother passing changed me the most, because I just didn't think it was going to happen. I mean, I was in shock. The other thing was, we had to go get bodies. We had to go to the funeral homes. I dug the grave for my brother, and it's just it's something that you just don't think is going to take place at all. And when things like that happen, you think about your life, you think about where you're at, and it's easy for Satan. Well, Christ died for you. All you got to do is ask. It's going to be okay. But we all know that Satan is a tempter, and he pulls us away to make us think that everything's okay when everything is not okay. Well, I'd had my radio on, and I had it on to a channel that has preaching on it. It's not something that I did all the time, but I made a decision that I was going to work at trying to be stronger. I was going to try to work at being the kind of person that I should be as a child of God. And I was listening to a preacher, and he was talking about this individual who was a Christian who did all of these things in God's name. And he finally died, and he stood before God in judgment. And when God faced him in judgment, he said, "Depart from me, you worker of iniquity." And it was like the man was begging, wait a minute. I did all these works for you in your name, and I did this and I did that. And if you're familiar with the scripture, God tells him, "I never knew you." I don't know what it was on that particular day, but on that day that I was driving and I heard that sermon that I'd heard hundreds of times, I made up my mind that moment. I am tired. I'm tired of being hot. I'm tired of being cold. I'm tired of being like a ping pong ball, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And I made the decision, I am not going to stand before God and him tell me, "I don't know who you are. I never knew you. Depart." I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change the things that I do, and I'm going to go after him. And I'm going to start learning all I can about him, because I know in my heart there is a right way to do this. And obviously I've had moments where I've done it the right way, but I've had a lot of moments where I've done it the wrong way. And the last thing I want to do is to be told, "Depart, I never knew you." So I got to thinking about, okay, that means I got to do it every day. That means I got to put him first, and I've got to love him more. And I thought, man, how do you do that? And I started asking the questions, how do you do certain things? Because I started on day one reading a chapter a day, never missing a day, and trying to get better and better and better to the point where, okay, if you don't get up and read and you go to work, you feel like, okay, what's missing? I've done something wrong. I had to create the habit. I had to start doing it. And I started reading the scriptures. And in the beginning, here's something else that took place that was a big mistake. I would read the scriptures, or as soon as I got through, instead of praying, I'd go get in the truck and I'd head to work, and I'd say, "Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to pray to God." And I'd make the prayer in the truck. Now, most people think, that's good that you did that. At least you prayed. But I had grown to the point where I said, I've learned more about God than I ever have, and my prayer is unacceptable. I need to understand that when I go to God in prayer, then I need to take everything away, just like Christ did when he told the apostles, "I'm going to go over here and I'm going to pray." I got to get away from everything. I got to get away from the noise. Because when I go to God in prayer, I'm being ushered to the throne of the Most High. And now, when I pray to God, I do it with sincerity. I do it with humility. I don't do it in the truck to check the box. Well, I prayed today, I'm all good. Another thing that I got to thinking about, if I'm supposed to love God the most and I'm supposed to think about God all the time, when I worked, and I worked for a company, I did fine with that. I was a spokesman for my company. I thought about my company day and night, 24/7. It was the first thing on my mind when I woke up, and it was the last thing on my mind when I went to bed. And I said, wait a minute. God has got to be that in my life. And I love college football. And, you know, I would wear the shirt every day. I'd wear it to work. And if we're playing for the championship, it was a big deal. And I thought, okay, I've got to get to the point that I love God more than that, because God tells me in his scriptures that I have to love him the most. And I'm telling you, I will say that set me back, and I'm thinking, okay, how do you do that? How do you think everything all day long? Now, I'm talking about when you're not on task, because you've got to be safe in what you do. But before you do it, after you do it, while you're driving, while you're doing anything that you're doing is not on task, how do you get to the point where you think about God? But I kept on. And I said, I'm going to know him, because I want him to know me. And I started praying to him, and I started doing it sincerely, and I started doing it with humility. And all of a sudden, the words that I read in the scriptures, which were the same words and scriptures I read many, many times, all of a sudden they're different. All of a sudden they have meaning. All of a sudden they become clear to understand better than I'd ever understood before. And I don't have a lot of social media, but I get on Facebook, and I made the announcement, I'm tired of being hot and cold. I'm going to be for God. And I started writing about it. And I started telling about the great things that started happening in my life, that started changing my life. Things that I cannot explain. But the greatest thing was how I felt. The greatest thing was the love that I felt back. And you cannot put this into scientific terms. You cannot put this into what we see and touch and understand. God is a spirit. So my life started to change. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect all the time, because the closer you get to God, the harder Satan's going to come after you, and the more he's going to pull you back, and the harder the hit's going to be from Satan. But the more love you'll get from God. And by the month of June, I've got to say I was the highest and the strongest that I'd ever been. The sting took place on June 30th. So by the time I got to the month of June 2021, I've got to say that I was probably the strongest and the highest that I'd ever been in the service of God. There are things that are magical that takes place once you make the decision. And I'd made the decision that I was going to develop a strong personal relationship with the Lord, making sure that I knew him and he knew me, because when I stand before him, I want him to tell me to enter, not to depart. But on June 28th and June 29th, the day before the sting, you'll see in videos that are coming up some of the posts that I made on Facebook. And I went back and looked at those after all this took place. And I was just shocked at some of the things that I said. And one of the things I said, and I believe it was on June 28th, I don't know how much time I've got remaining, but as long as the days I have remaining, I'm going to serve the Lord. I've made a good living in life. I've had a great life. But none of that compares to how great it feels when you have a strong personal relationship with the Lord. So on the 28th and 29th of June, I was there, and then on the morning of June 30th, 2021, when the sting took place. Before that sting took place, I was up here. It didn't matter if I had a day left. It didn't matter if I had a year left. I had already accepted the fact that my goal is to be with the Lord. Not just in eternity, but every day and every moment. And I got where I was with the Lord more than I was thinking about my company when I was working for that company. I thought about the Lord a lot more than a college football game or any sporting event or anything that takes place. And I will say this, everything in the world around me just kind of went down in value, while peace, happiness, and joy that all of us are searching for, I was getting all of that for free without having to do anything except believing and obeying and worshiping. And as you follow these videos and you understand where I was spiritually and how happy that I was as a human being, you're going to see that I had difficulty after the sting, because it knocked me off of my center because of the disappointment. And that was my motivation for moving to the Lord, because I had lost people close to me, and I finally gained strength to overcome the evil one and said, no more. I'm going to search after God. I'm going to build a strong personal relationship with Him. And that's exactly what I did. And on the morning of June 30th, 2021, I was ready. Because I'd already got myself mentally prepared for anything in this world that takes place. Lord, I'm ready. Whenever you want to take me, I'm ready. If I had a situation that I was working on or anything that's going on, it didn't matter. The Lord is with me. We're going to get through all of this together. This is about God. This is about His Son. And this is about the everlasting love that He has. Not just for those that are good, but for those who have fallen, for those who have sinned. He is there for every one of us, and that was the greatest lesson that I learned. I had trouble forgiving myself of many things. And when I started reading the pages, especially in the New Testament, of all the mistakes that the people made, and all of them that asked were forgiven, then it's for me as well. Thank you, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the upcoming videos.